From May 28th to July 6th, 2018, 14 undergraduate students and 9 mentors traveled from the United States to Belize under a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture in order to conduct research and extension in the Vaca Forest Reserve. This is that story. Part 1. The Work Week. Monday through Friday was essentially the same from week to week. We would wake up at 5:30 a.m. and from that time on, we would work and travel until 8 o'clock when it was time for bed. Waking up at 5:30 a.m. became strangely natural after only a few days. We would wake up, walk out the door, up the path, through the yoga studio, past the pool on the left and the garden on the right, to arrive for breakfast by 6 o'clock. I'd start the day with instant coffee mixed with cinnamon water. Breakfast varied from day to day, but would usually include some variety of eggs, bread, beans, and fruit. After breakfast, we would fill up our camelbacks, grab lunch to go, and make our way to the truck. The drive to the Vaca starts in Sukuts, where we're staying, goes through the town of Benke, past border security, and continues south until we arrive at our desired destination. The journey from our camp in Sukuts to the Vaca takes about an hour, give or take 30 minutes, depending on where we need to go, who is driving, and the conditions of the road. Occasionally, we would pick up a farmer to save them a few hours from making the journey on foot. Sometimes, after a hard rain, the road would be rocky, which made the drive less than pleasant, but on other days, the road would be smooth, which makes the long trip much easier. From there, we would park and head out to the woods in groups of 2 or more. For me, the beginning of the day meant hiking through the bush for at least an hour before arriving at my first sample location. This meant hiking along barbed wire fences, through dense vegetation, uphill, through mud,
big puddles,
and other obstacles. The hike was challenging, but always worth it. My research is focused on studying water quality of creeks in the Vaca, which is why having rubber boots was essential. Along the way, it is important to keep a lookout for critters like spiders, snakes, scorpions, and ants. Not to mention vegetation that might be on fire or harmful, like the give and take seen here, or the bullhorn plant. The bullhorn is home to thousands of ants, and if you make the mistake of touching it, the ants will be unleashed and begin attacking whoever disturbed them. Fortunately, the Vaca is also home to non-threatening wildlife as well, like these leafcutter ants traveling across this log, and the Vaca dogs. Most farms have guard dogs of some sort, which should not be approached, but other dogs were more friendly and actually allowed you to pet them, like Randy at Roberto's,
No, good Vaca pup.
and this little guy at Antulio's. Although I never saw one in person, we could sometimes hear the shouts of a howler monkey, and if you listen closely, you may be able to hear it. One of the most important tools in the Vaca is the machete. The machete was perfect for clearing paths in dense vegetation and making stakes for sensors. It is an essential and versatile tool for all workers. 11 a.m. meant lunchtime, which we would often eat at the Express to Success, but most times you'd eat where you are. Lunch would most times be some form of burrito or sandwich, and afterwards we'd get right back to it. Some locations for sampling were easy to get to and very accessible. Others were not. Some were on steep land and others required walking through fields of cows to reach a creek. Although they looked docile, being in a field of large animals was very overwhelming because most of them have horns, even the females. But eventually, we would be out of the field and on to our next site. This summer, there were 7 ongoing research projects. Kate was studying tilapia ponds on farms, Gracie was studying intercropping systems, Zenabeth was studying bats along with Mallory, Grace, and Laura, Carson was studying forestry around the creeks, Shayna was studying teak, and Aaron conducted surveys for a human dimensions analysis. Doing research in a foreign country is already challenging enough, and our work would have been a lot more difficult if we did not have the help of the Friends for Conservation and Development, specifically Carlos, Ryan, and Jairo, who knew the forest like the back of their hand, that guided us up mountains, through bat caves, and provided their expertise throughout the trip. Another valuable, indispensable resource came from Antulio, who was an incredible collaborator, friend, and host. He welcomed us to his farm throughout the summer, showed off his freshwater spring, introduced us to his baby cow, and showed us an ancient Mayan well which still produces water today. By the end of the day, we were all physically exhausted and ready for the air-conditioned ride back to camp. The end of the day was usually marked by either 3 p.m. or by the rain. The vodka could pour unforgivingly as we made our way back down the mountain in our truck. If you were lucky, you'd ride in the cab, but if we couldn't squeeze, you'd end up in the truck bed. However, there were times when travel did not go as planned. Throughout the trip, we had 3 popped tires, although often we were saved by locals. One day we had a battery problem, but we were saved when Antulio came riding down the mountain in his 50-year-old tractor to help fix our truck. On another occasion, we were lent a 3-ton jack by a man named Doug, who advised us to
jack it up a little higher.
After these events, we made our way back to town, past the police checkpoint, to make it back in time for dinner. Dinner was served promptly at 6 p.m. every night, where it was always accompanied by juice. The most common meal was chicken, rice, and beans, but other times we would eat something else that contained lots of, bread. After dinner, we would go back to the cabin, clean up, shower, use some Wi-Fi, and get ready for the next day, because we would end up doing all of this again tomorrow. Part 2. The weekend. The weekends were our time to travel. We went to the Belize Botanical Garden in nearby San Ignacio so that we could see some vegetation we might not get a chance to see in the Vaca, and to catch some pretty great views. The next weekend, we headed out on an educational boat tour of the McCall River. We got the chance to see some amazing waterfalls and jump off of them. Even though the trip was educational, we still found ways to make it a fun day. The next weekend, we had a relaxing beach weekend at Placencia Beach. Although it was cloudy and there was lots of seaweed in the water, we didn't let that ruin our weekend, because at least we had the beach dogs. The next weekend, we headed out to the Belize Zoo. A major highlight was walking into a jaguar cage. The jaguar's name is Junior, and he was born in captivity, so this was very safe, but it still freaked me out to be in there. The jaguar expert was in the cage with us the whole time and introduced us to Junior, who hopped on top of the cage to greet us. Not only that, but we were also able to receive a jaguar kiss through the top of the cage.
Good.
Then, while Junior was being distracted by food, we could pet his back paw. There was still more to see after saying goodbye to Junior. We got the chance to meet a tapir, see a family of uncaged monkeys, and more. We even got to come back at night for a special night tour. We started by greeting a python, which we would wear around our necks. The tour continued by hand feeding the tapir some carrots, checking out a kinkajou, revisiting Junior for an evening meal.
Oh, what a good boy.
Trying to see a crocodile, getting a glimpse of a margay, hanging out with a puma, and listening to an ocelot devour a meal.
Good boy.
The next weekend we went into the Chickabel National Forest, which brought us some unique views of western Belize we had not seen before. While we were there, we also checked out Caracol, which is a large site of Mayan ruins. We hiked all the way up several pyramids, which was a lot of legwork to say the least. Once we were up there, we explored and checked out the view, which was pretty insane. Then came making our way back down, which was much more challenging than I thought it would be. On that same day, we ventured off to find a bat cave that made the one in the Vaca look downright tiny, and that was pretty amazing. On some Saturdays, we would make our way to San Ignacio, which is about 20 minutes away. The Saturday morning market was incredible. You could find anything there from fresh fish to homemade pupusas, which are pretty much corn tortillas stuffed with any combination of cheese, beans, and meat.
Wow!
The videoing?
Yeah.
You can also find fresh pressed juice of most fruits and a selection of the best produce you can find in Belize, like dragon fruit, soursop, mangoes, and habanero peppers. But a trip to San Ignacio would not be complete if we didn't stop at Western Dairies for some ice cream. San Ignacio is also home to Gracie's mom's mural, which can be found near the center of town. Sundays are usually catch-up days, which means laundry. And laundry meant filling up a bucket with soap and water, dumping in your clothes, and manually putting your things on spin cycle. Then the clothes were put on the line, where you'd hope it wouldn't rain. Then we would make a lunch and grocery store trip to fill up on plantain chips for the week. Plus, a trip to the store wouldn't be complete without grabbing some Western Dairies frozen treats. Sunday is also for doing catch-up work. For Kate, this meant looking through a microscope at phytoplankton, and for me, it meant processing some samples that are kept in the freezer and analyzing my E. coli samples. Which brings me to part 3. I am lazy. You see, I had this plan to use this field journal as a metaphor for the journey we had this summer, and I was going to print out all of these pictures, glue them in, then add some dates and notes like I actually kept this as a journal this summer, instead of just using it as a cinematic prop. But then my printer ran out of color ink, which is why I'm doing this on my phone now. Anyway, our 6 weeks in Belize were really exceptional. I'm so grateful to be a part of this project and to have the opportunity to work with such incredible people and scientists. So finally, we come to part 4, which is not the end because we'll be back. So for now, we'll say until next summer.